All right, so I want to present to you my project for Ed 522 Curriculum and Instruction, Remote Learning compared to Face-to-Face Learning at UDAHS. Let me present this. Share screen. There you go. All right. There we go. So the problem, remote or face-to-face. So at Upper Dauphin Area High School, we give the option for students to learn remotely from home, to feel safe and comfortable learning at home, and how we can connect with these students. So UDASD, we have one-to-one iPad initiative for all the students at Upper Dauphin so that they have an iPad and they can learn with this new tool of technology. So because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have given the option for students to learn at home and, like I said, to feel more comfortable. Also, we're allowing students to face to face, which is allowing students to come in like normal, just with a mask and socially distanced in the classroom, and they can learn and how they can be presented information through direct instruction, classroom activities in school setting, in the classroom. Currently, Upper Dauphin is following an asynchronous model, which is really pushing for the education, the information to be used at at different times, so that it doesn't have to be a live feed for students. That students can come back and view the recorded lesson and video at a later date if they want to. And that's a great setting. That's a good idea, especially for students that need help or aid or some sort of benefit from parents or guardians, an older brother or sister that can help them with their schoolwork and understand certain information. So that was the goal. That was the idea. And overall, it's not working the greatest. It's not working the best. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that right now. So the problems with asynchronous learning, it's given the option for students to learn remote, like I said, and they don't have to be in a live setting. And that caused a lot of issues, especially for the educator, which I'll talk about first. So the educator, the instructor of the classroom, they can't proctor exams, assessment. That has been a big question mark for many educators at UDAHS and colleagues and people in my department. It's like, how do we try to proctor exams? How do we try to proctor assessment for these students? It's tough. I mean, there's really no way of trying to do that. And there are some instances where students come in to take exams, assessment, and they would leave right after. But we can't force students to do that. So that's one underlying issue. And obviously the students that are face-to-face, they have an issue with that as well, because they know that many students are going to be at home cheating. It is what it is. Also with asynchronous learning, another problem for the instructor is that really opens the table for communication, and really the job never ends. Okay, when the instructor goes home, there's constant emails from students when they get around to learning a lesson or direct instruction through recorded methods, or performing assignments or activities at later dates, let's say at 9, 10 o'clock when it usually happens. And they try to connect with the educator instructor, which I'm open to it. I'm fine with it. It's just for some other educators or instructors, it's a problem. It's to a point where their job never ends. They're on shift 24/7. And that's another problem for educators. And let's just say for some reason you're busy later at night and you see the emails popping up. There's several hundreds of emails in a way that, let's say, every student that you teach wants to try to communicate with you at a later time. And I see 30, 40 emails sometimes in a span of an hour or two. And that's after school hours, which, hey, that's fine. As an educator, I think that's what I need to do, especially for a school district, for students. But for many other instructors, that's just not the way it should be. And I totally understand that. So that is some stress for instructors that they have. Another thing is that many students just fall behind, okay? And the instructor feels like it's their job and their duty, which it is, to try to get that student back on track in the right direction. And I mean, it's to the point in the high school where, these students are old enough, 18, 17 years old, especially for my academic and AP courses. These students should be, held accountable for their actions if they're late with work, assignments, so on and so forth. Google Classroom is a platform that we utilize at Upper Dauphin Area High School, and the whole school district as a whole. And it works really well. It's a great way to connect with the students, post assignments, announcements, assessments. It even shows a calendar, which shows the due dates and sends alert to students to let them know that what assignment's coming up and what is due at what certain time. For many students, they have those notifications turned off, and the remote students especially, they get around to it at a later date, and it comes to the point where it's late and the assignment becomes a zero. It's just a way that we need to try to hold our students accountable. And after that happens once, twice, kind of domino effect happens where it just keeps going. And we find a remote student falling behind drastically in a quick amount of time. Yeah, that's pretty much where I was getting at here. And a lot of the times too, which I don't have data for it, but I know because when I go out for lunch, I see some of the remote students working a full-time job, a part-time job, whatever it might be. And they are, when they're supposed to be learning, they are actually going out and working, and they have concerns when they're late and with assignments, and that they are not receiving the grade that they would want or desire. Well, it's kind of hard when you're working a full-time job. You have extracurricular activities after school then, and then you get around to the work, let's say 7, 8 o'clock at night after you eat dinner, shower, so on and so forth. So those are some of the problems and issues that we have, and that I'm presenting for the Upper Dauphin Area High School with the asynchronous learning model. All right, so this is some of the data that I collected throughout the course of eligibility worksheets or eligibility sheets that are sent out towards the end of the week, each week. And I compiled this throughout, the course of the first 3 weeks and gathered that data. And this is what I'm presenting right now. So here's the data. So a total of 472 classes in our high school currently being failed, 9 through 12. Remote students are failing 294 classes. So of the 472 classes, that's 62%, close to 63. And that's alarming. I mean, let's face it, 63% of the students, that's well over half that are, failing and they are not achieving what they need to or desire to in a class. And that's alarming. For face-to-face students, there's 178 classes being failed, so around 37%, right? Maybe 38%. And I mean, yeah, that's pretty high yet, but typically with a school, you're going to have failed classes, and not every student, even students that are in AP courses or honored courses or, college credited courses, that happens. And it just shows, though, the difference right here. It's to the point where remote students are almost failing double the amount of classes, failing at least one class, and compared to face-to-face students. So the data shows that students who present face-to-face learning are failing less classes currently. All right, so the next slide here, data, students failing classes remote compared to face-to-face. So this is total of 200 students in our high school failing a class, so just one class. So remote students, 82 students failing just one class. All right, that's 41%. So face-to-face students, 119 students failing one class. Okay, so with that, it just shows that, this is remote students are failing class less than face-to-face students. And that just kind of shows that these students that are learning remote, they have the ability to look back at assignments, look back at assessments, and they have ample time to complete these assessments. And let's face it, they're probably utilizing some sort of resource or material when they're taking these assessments. And this is kind of the conflict we have with students that are learning face-to-face and with stakeholders in the community. It's like, how is this fair? How is this even allowed? When it comes to honor roll and picking out who's going to be in National Honor Society, I'm sure this is going to be a huge issue that is going to be brought up. We didn't get there yet, so that's coming. I just don't know how that's going to result. All right, so data: percent of student failing at least one class remote compared to face-to-face. All right, so percent of students failing at least one class compared to total enrollment. All right, so remote students are failing at least one class. We have 82 of the total remote students of 125. So 82 of the 125 students, around 66%, are failing one class. Face-to-face students are failing at least one class, 119. Total face-to-face students is 235, so around 50, which, like I said, that's almost normal in a way. Obviously, we would like those numbers to go down, but that being said, it is what it is. So remote students, comparable to the amount of students failing at least one class to the total amount of remote students, that is an alarming number. That's really high. And it just shows that these remote students are not taking consideration their education whenever they're, working a part-time job, full-time job. They might not be taking activities or assignments. They're not held accountable for that. Okay. And it comes to a point where we need to try to solve this issue. And I think a synchronous learning model would benefit that, which I'll talk about here soon. And realistically, we kind of made our own bed with that. The asynchronous model is just allowing students to become held less accountable, and they can learn at their own pace. And it puts a lot more pressure on the educator, the instructor, and even face-to-face students. All right, so ineligible students remote compared to face-to-face. So with ineligible students, we have failing at least two classes. That is just the rule. So if you're ineligible, you can't participate in extracurricular activities. So the remote students who are ineligible, 58% of remote students are ineligible. That's 63%, around 64% of the 125 that we mentioned. So face-to-face students who are ineligible, just 33, not too bad. Percentage, around 36%, which is, like I mentioned before, that's over double the amount of ineligible students that are learning remote compared to face-to-face. So it just shows that face-to-face in a synchronous model of learning is just more beneficial than the asynchronous online platform that we're currently delivering to our students remotely. Total ineligible students and overall. So total ineligible students compared to our overall enrollment, we have 360 overall enrollment. Remote students, about 58 ineligible, which I mentioned from the previous slide. And percentage of remote students who are ineligible from total number of students at UDAHS, the high school, is around 16%. Okay, so of the 125 students, 58 of them are ineligible, which means that 16% of the ineligible students that we have are remote students. Face-to-face, 33 of the 360, so that's just around 9%. Okay, again, it's almost double, and we're taking from a larger population from face-to-face, so those numbers are alarming. So the data represents that there's a higher percentage of remote students who are ineligible compared to face-to-face students who are ineligible at the high school. So conclusion and data analysis. Data shows that students who are learning remote are not achieving nearly as much as a student is learning face-to-face. Their education is clearly not working, whether it is because of an asynchronous model, method of learning, or because students are too preoccupied at home. Okay, obviously through the pandemic last spring, it was very hard to deliver instruction, especially with grading. How do you grade the students? Okay, and there's so many different forms of stimulus around a student at home that they won't perform their best work. They won't be held accountable, and it's to the point where they're going to be preoccupied with other things around them, which, let's face it, anybody working from home now, it could be in the business field, it could be obviously an educator at home. It's just not the same type of education that they would be receiving in the classroom. So from the data, students should be learning from a synchronous level in order to assure educational understanding and do proctor assessments. So a synchronous level of an online platform for these educators, we need to connect with face-to-face students and also students that are learning remote. If we have a synchronous method for these students that are learning, online remote, then that would overall improve their grades, I would think, and that would allow them to participate in discussions, and this will help them understand information that we go over in class, and different types of pair grouping, and understanding concepts and methods a lot better if we're all in a synchronous method rather than learning and understanding something 2 hours after the direct instruction was delivered. Maybe they have some insight, these remote students, maybe have some insight or a discussion point that might enhance the learning for many students or just make it more relatable. With this asynchronous model, we're losing that type of discussion posts and points that we could involve within our lessons. So strategies to enhance the learning. Overall, I think we already mentioned this before, a synchronous model. So having the students, log in, and be involved with the lesson as it's going on to the face-to-face students in the classroom. I think that overall this would be very beneficial for the remote students, that they can learn at the same time, be involved in discussions. Okay, this also help the educator so that the information is delivered right at that moment. So any questions that they need or they have on an activity or assignment, it is stated right at the same time. So and they can ask the questions right after the assignment's delivered. Um, this would also help with different types of assessment. So, with the new types of technological appliances and software and applications that we have, we can view a student's screen as they are taking an assessment or a test, and this will overall help with cheating. Okay, and understand the actual level where that student is falling and what type of achievement that they are earning from the discussions, from the lesson, direct instruction, so on and so forth. And this will overall just make the community better as well, the classroom environment, because those face-to-face students know, what, that cheating's not happening, that it's not going on. All right, so overall, a synchronous model with this online learning platform. This will eliminate any type of extra tension or any type of extra work or any type of anxiety that an educator might have at home. Also, this will help with stakeholders with assessments, standardized assessment towards the end of the year to make sure that that these students are learning at the same level as face-to-face students, offer more discussion posts, and overall benefit the learning for all students. I also mentioned within the strategies that we could maybe have an option, a way that these students can be awarded with an asynchronous learning model. So if a student is failing a class or if they're not performing to their level and achievement, they can be kind of restricted or forced back into a synchronous learning model. But if the student is accountable, if they are completing all work, activities, assignments, and they're achieving more at a proficient level, then they can be awarded with that asynchronous learning model. That they have the ability to have a part-time job that they can maybe help out with volunteer community, different types of projects. Okay, that they can do their learning after they're done with these sort of things, that they are responsible enough to complete the work, and it shows. And I think that maybe can be a reward system for many students and to help motivate them to perform the best they can through online learning remote. And who knows, that might change the dynamics of education forever. We might have this option where we can offer education to students where they can have a part-time job and they can work their way through high school to help maybe prepare themselves for college through funds, obviously, and maybe take college credited courses at the same time they're learning at high school level. Overall, that the options, the benefits are, with this new method of learning, I think this really could help and improve students' achievement and motivation and really prepares for a future. And yeah, I think that would be very beneficial. Um, Obviously, with asynchronous learning, I talked about how there's problems of it, but like I mentioned just now, this could be a benefit for education moving forward. Overall, I think we learn better in the classroom in a classroom setting. But if students are held accountable, if they're responsible, and they can get the work done and achieve a high standard, then maybe this can open up the options where students can have a job, and maybe complete some college credited courses at the same time as they're still in high school. And I think this would overall be very beneficial for the student. Um, so with that, I think we can adapt our curriculum to a point where we can involve a synchronous model where students are learning at the same rate, the same pace as face-to-face students, and we can overall be included in the learning environment. Okay, and how educators are now adapting to teach on an online platform and face-to-face. And this almost could be like a hybrid model in a way, but at the same time, we're delivering information to students that are learning at home and in the classroom. And like mentioned before, I think this is something that we'll see in the future a lot. And I don't think this is going to go away. And, especially for some school districts, a lot of the concerns for administration, superintendents is students that leave to go to enroll into cyber school. This could limit that. And this could really save on some costs that the school district has to pay in order for the student to be enrolled in a cyber school. So overall, I think this is a great benefit that we can have, and we can adapt our curriculum to really fit this model of learning for students that can learn remote and at home. And I think a synchronous model needs to be involved in some shape or form in order to reach those types of set standards with standardized testing and assessment, and to show and prove the stakeholders and the community that we are delivering a sound education to our students, even through remote methods. And here are my references, my resources that I use to help understand synchronous learning and understand different forms of technology and appliances that we can use within our learning model. Overall, I think the UDAHS and school district as a whole does a great job at supplying those resources to our students with the one-to-one iPad initiative. Each educator has a MacBook Air, a laptop, and iPad, and for in the classroom we have Apple TVs, which helps us with presentations and overall connecting to our students remotely and in an online fashion. So we have the capability to do this, and we have the capability to really have access to the new forms of software and applications to overall benefit student learning in a remote fashion, online fashion. All right, that's what I have.